Things just took a major turn as we have multiple huge new Leafs updates to go over today. And following what was a disappointing game against the Panthers in Game 3, we have some big updates that have emerged surrounding multiple key players, including Anthony Stolarz. To break down exactly what those are, as well as discuss some other interesting things surrounding this series that have fans fired up. A ton to go over today, but before you get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're getting close to 18,000 subscribers. If you're enjoying the daily Leafs content and you're excited for Game 4, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll be live tomorrow following the game with Darius. A lot to go over today. We've now had some time to, think about the loss and collect ourselves a little bit. Pretty tough loss, but it is what it is. You focus now on to Game 4, and that's what the team is doing. They have a great chance to go up 3-1 in the series and bring it back home to Toronto. But there's a lot of things to go over today. Now, obviously, Joseph Woll coming off of an iffy game. Some fans thought he played really bad. Some fans thought he was okay. Depending what side of the fence you're on, we all want Anthony Stolarz back to a degree here. And we have a big update that came out this morning from Craig Berube on Anthony Stolarz, as well as a report from Darren Dreger. So you start here. Anthony Stolarz is progressing according to Craig Berube, but hasn't started skating yet, suggesting his return is still a bit away. And I'll dive into it in a minute here. We have a quote from Darren Dreger. But before we get into that, I want to get your thoughts on just this in general. He hasn't skated yet, which rules out Game 4, probably rules out Game 5. What are your thoughts on this? And most importantly, Joseph Woll is going to have to, he's probably going to be the goalie for, my guess is the rest of the series, but we'll have to see there. And at least he's progressing, but this is not ideal. And we still don't know the specifics of the injury, which is unfortunate.
We'll never know the specifics of the injury, but we do have a timeline now from Darren Dreger that we'll get to in a second. That'll give us a better idea of kind of what's going on and, when we expect to see Anthony Stolarz back. Because the update we all want is that he will be back in the next game, obviously. But Joseph Woll, there's been a lot of talk about him, this morning, at the time we're recording this, like it's been, nonstop at this point since he came in Game 1. And has he been good? That is the question. Or has he been bad, really? I guess that's the question that a lot of people are asking. And I think he's been okay, honestly. Like Craig Berube has said, I think he's been fine. Can he be better? Yes. And I think that's what everyone's looking for him to raise the bar, to play like he did in the third period and most of overtime last night. So if he can do that and string that together consistently, then they will be okay. But he hasn't done that yet. So has he been bad? I don't think so. I think he's made some big saves, but he can be better, and we've seen better from him.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality is he hasn't been bad at all, but he also hasn't been great, and we've seen Stolarz be great most of the year. And let's dive into that now. Now, late last night on, I think it was midnight, maybe a little bit earlier than that, on the TSN show, panel, whatever you want to call it, he said Game 6 is best case scenario at this point. The actual quote was, paraphrasing a little bit here, the plan was and the ideal outcome would have been Game 5, but based on what he's hearing, it's going to be Game 6, and this was last night, and that coincides exactly with what Craig Berube said here about him not skating. So shout out to Darren Dreger on this game. I didn't see many people talking about that. It was on the show late last night. So it's a little bit unfortunate in that front. In Game 6, that would, of course, be on the road, so it would be an interesting game. And not only on the road, I want to get your thoughts on this, Darius. Obviously, the Leafs at this point, if he plays in Game 6 or whenever it ends up being, they would, of course, on the road, but B, that'd be a high pressure game for someone who hasn't played in quite a long time if he doesn't play until Game 6.
I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit because there is still a scenario in this series where the Leafs win this in 5. And I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes, but there really is. And if they win the next game, you're up 3-1, you're going back to Toronto. And I think that the team knows the importance of, certainly the next game, Game 4, getting that win. And if they're up 3-1, they know the importance of finishing it. Just close it out. Do not go back to Florida because then you never know what's going to happen. So it's a tricky situation. If Anthony Stolarz is ready for Game 6 and the series does go 6, you have to see where Joseph Woll is at that point. If he lets in another stinker like he did last night, maybe you make the decision to put Stolarz in. I think that you probably still go back to Stolarz based on how Woll is playing right now because I think he can be better. We just haven't seen it yet. And the biggest thing to me is the goaltender playing the puck. Bobrovsky has been good. There's been a lot of goaltenders that are doing it well in this series playoffs. The one guy that's standing out to me that cannot do it, and it's almost, a detriment to the team, is Joseph Woll. So just for almost that reason alone, and we're going to have another video on why it's such a big deal in this series, and if they can't figure that out specifically, the Leafs might be in trouble, but that's something that's got to be cleaned up until Stolarz comes back, and I would put Stolarz back right away just because of that in this series.
Yeah, it obviously depends on how Woll does tomorrow and beyond that as well. But some interesting points from Craig Berube on the positive takeaway from the team's response in the third period. In terms of playing our game for the whole 60 minutes, we had a good first, I thought. When we came out in the second, we had to be direct with what we do. In the third, we got back to playing our game, pressuring, putting pressure on them, finishing the checks. In overtime, we had our opportunities. We had offensive zone time. We were doing things. It is a bounce. That's what happens in overtime a lot of the time. And yeah, I don't think either team necessarily outplayed one another in the overtime period. I think the Leafs outplayed the Panthers in the first, and probably, I mean, I would say at the third as well. The second period, though, can't really happen in the playoffs where you give up 2 goals in the span of 2 minutes. And obviously, defensive breakdowns, Joseph Wall overplaying one side. But at the end of the day, and there were some other opportunities where the Panthers could have scored as well. So it's a little bit unfortunate there. But he talked about the turning point, dove into that a little bit because, again, he had a good second. They weren't direct. I want to get your thoughts on this. We were talking about it on the stream and off camera about them finishing their checks. That second period was disastrous. If they don't have the worst, period of their playoff run thus far, maybe there's, debate for game 4 against the Senators. But regardless of that, entire game was pretty bad. We'd be talking about a 3-0 series right now because they ultimately scored. It's very rare where the Leafs score 4 goals and lose the game. And by very rare, I mean, I'm pretty sure they've lost like 4 games in the last like 60 when they score 3 goals or more. So it's very interesting there. And Craig Berube said he didn't love the 4th goal, but other than that, he was fine. And if you actually listen and watch the press conference, he was more positive than this, fine pick tweet. He said he was very good overall. That was how it started. So, conveniently left out there. He was fine. He was good. I want to get your thoughts on that because there's a very real, world where this series is 3-0. But that doesn't really matter now. What matters is not having second periods like that because, an unlucky bounce here and there. The first goal of the game was unlucky. This game could have easily been 4-1 Leafs, but at the same time, could have also been, a different story as well if the Panthers got a couple bounces.
I think this is the story of the series right now, actually, that almost nobody's talking about. The Florida Panthers scored 5 goals last night. One of them came, or I should say 4 of them came on the long change. One of them was in overtime when you have the long change. The rest of them came in the second period. Florida was absolutely exposing the Leafs in that way. I thought the Leafs had great pushback in that game. They obviously tied the game, sent it to overtime, all of that. Weathered the storm because, again, they went up early and, squandered the lead and all that, but weathered the storm pretty well. But then on the long change, there were multiple times in the second period and overtime that the Panthers pinned the Leafs in their own zone. The Leafs did not have the same type of pressure. So they have to figure that out going into game 4. That is the biggest thing. And it all starts, again, with the puck movement from your goaltender, right? That is a big part of it. Maybe it doesn't start with that, but that is a big part of it. So they got to clean that up going into game 4 because, again, the Panthers scored 4 goals that way, doing a very specific forecheck and structure that they have, and then capitalizing after they have sustained pressure for like 45 seconds to a minute. So it happened multiple times. It definitely happened on the overtime winner. I think that's the story of the series right now because if the Leafs don't clean that up, it's just going to keep happening. So they really have to clean that up. Joseph Wall has to be better at playing the puck, and we'll see what happens in game 4. But I know that there's going to be a lot of attention to detail there because Craig Berube has now mentioned it at this point. So I know that they're going to spend some time talking about it.
Yeah, Wes McCauley, for those wondering, Leafs are 0-9 all time with him working playoff games. So that's something we're going to keep an eye out because I believe he's going to be reffing in tomorrow's game as well. There's been some rumblings about that. And I know a lot of people are asking if refs can ref, multiple games in a row. Keep in mind the linesman went out with injury or something in game 2. So that's why Wes McCauley came in, for those wondering. So that's just something to keep in mind there. But a couple other things before I wrap up. The lines, they're going to remain, we assume, the same. Tomorrow, I'm sure we'll get a practice and we'll get some updates. But at this point, they're going to remain pretty similar here. However, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. A lot to talk about. Holmberg was moved up to the second line there, and we saw in overtime. The unfortunate reality was it looked like Holmberg was among leaders in the Leafs in time on ice, and there was a lot of times where they had very good breaks, like very good opportunities, but it was Pontus Holmberg who got the puck, and he doesn't really do anything with it. And if that was somebody else, probably not Pacioretty, maybe even Pacioretty to set up for anybody else there, it probably would have been a goal. And we've seen it at times where, Berube put Nylander on the first line when they needed a goal to go with, of course, Matthews Nylander to end shift and a period. The Holmberg situation is becoming a little bit interesting to me. Of course, you can see here as well, it says Domi, McMahon, Holmberg down there on the 4th line with Lorenz, Lott, and Yarncroke. So things are moving around there. We're going to have to see because they've been juggling it a lot. I would assume the lines are going to be the same, but we are seeing some, changes here on Puckpedia. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that, when you look at last game, there was a lot of juggling of the lines, like you said. Like Nylander at some points was on the first line. Pacioretty moved down. They had McMahon up there. Like they're playing musical chairs with the left wing for a lot of that game. Obviously, Holmberg, like you mentioned, up on the second line too. So the other thing is the defense pairings were messed with for the first time last game as well. And I think that plays into the long change as well. And they were trying to, the matchup game is all messed up because now you're on the road as well. So Florida's going to get the matchups that they want or, at certain points of the game, of course. But That's something that, I think might actually figure itself out. I know it sounds kind of weird, but as you move towards the next game, the Leafs have bounced back very well after bad losses. And not bad, it wasn't a bad loss. I thought they played really well for parts of that game, but when when it comes down to it, it was a heartbreaking loss, and they do bounce back from those. So I think that they're going to have a really good effort. I feel like guys like McMahon have to get going. They need a goal out of that guy. So, maybe putting him up on the second line will give him a boost, but they just weren't getting much out of, those any line last night like they were in the first two games. So I think that they will be able to bounce back in game four, but we'll see what they have up their sleeve. But I thought it was interesting they were messing with the defense pairings because clearly Benoit and OEL were getting exposed last night in a road game. So we'll see if they continue to mess with them, but I think they start the game with probably the same pairings.
Yeah, let us know down below your thoughts. Our 10 new updates coming your way. We'll have another video for you later tonight, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.